The title is The Heterogeneous Institutional Shareholding, Internal Control and Corporate Social Responsibility, Evidence from Chinese Listed Companies. So the study analyzed the impact of heterogeneous institutional shareholding on corporate social responsibility, which means the CSR performance, and corporate internal control, IC, and explores the immediate effect of internal control between heterogeneous institutional shareholding and CSR performance. The results show that the pressure resistance institutional shareholding significantly improves CSR fulfillment degree and the effectiveness of internal control, while pressure-sensitive institutional shareholding has no significant promoting effect on CSR fulfillment and IC effectiveness. IC has a significant immediate effect between pressure-sensitive institutional shareholding and CSR fulfillment. Finally, it is suggested that the structure of institutional investors should be optimized, and the shareholding ratio of security investment funds, qualified foreign institutional investors, and social security funds should be enhanced to improve CSR performance and IC effectiveness. And the mediating effect of IC between institutional ownership and CSR fulfillment should be promoted to strengthen the consciousness of the enterprises to take the initiative to enhance the CSR performance. So here's the content. There are 7 parts of this paper: introduction, literature, data source, variable definition, description, statistics, and correlation, modal regression analysis, robust test, and conclusion and suggestions. So the first one, that should be the introduction of this paper. The background is, as the Chinese economic development has entered into a new area, the enterprises need to fulfill the social responsibility to achieve a stable employment, improve the people's livelihood, cultural prosperity, and sound ecological environment. According to the stakeholders theory, CSR activities mean taking the responsibility for shareholders, suppliers, employees, customers, the government, communities, and the environment. So the basis is that this study classified the security investment funds, social security funds, and the QVIN as pressure-resistant institutional investors, which have no commercial relationship with the invested companies and have a stronger independence by and large, and the insurance companies, securities, brokers, final companies, and non-financial listed companies are classified as pressure-sensitive institutional investors, which have commercial relationship with the invested companies. So the methodology is that this study analyzed the relationship among heterogeneous institutional ownership, IC and CSR, and explores the joint mechanism of internal and external governments on CSR performance. So the contribution of this paper is trying to, from the perspective of IC effectiveness, this study imperfectly tested the mediating effect of IC between heterogeneous institutional ownership and CSR performance to further improve and analyze the relevant institutional norms and explore the effectiveness pathway to improve CSR performance. So that's the contribution. So next, we'll look at the literature theoretical basis and most important, the research hypothesis. There are 3 hypotheses in this paper. For the first one, the hypothesis 1 means that the pressure-resistant institutional ownership can significantly enhance the CSR performance, while pressure-sensitive institutional ownership has no significant promoting effect on CSR performance. That is the first one. The second hypothesis is that pressure-resistant institutional shareholding can significantly enhance the IC effectiveness, while pressure-sensitive institutional shareholding has no significant promoting effect on IC effectiveness. The third one, that is, effect IC, means that the effective internal control has a significant immediate effect on the process of pressure-resistant institutions promoting CSR performance, but this effect is not reflected between the pressure-sensitive institutional ownership and CSR performance. So that's the basic three kind of hypotheses. And in the part 3, we can see that the part 3 includes 3 kind of different items. For the first one, the data source and the variable definition, and the last one, that is model setting. The first one, data source. The data source is mainly about the listed companies publicly traded in Shanghai and Shenzhen stock market from 2011 and 2008 are selected as in the sample, where the data of IC effectiveness are from DBI, IC, and risk management database, other data from Seismic China stock market research database, wind information terminal, etc. The data are eliminated according to the following standards: finance and insurance, ST. ST means special treatments. ST classes, ST class with a star, which means it'd be more risky to investment. Finally, 4,856 groups of annual individual data are obtained as effective observations. The continuous variables are once treated with bidirectional 100 quantiles to avoid adverse effect of abnormal observations. It will be normal after that. And here is the variable definitions. We can see that in this definition, in the variable definition, there is different kind of variables that defined in the regression model. We can see there is maybe there is the year and the salary, the asset and the growth. The growth of, it means the sales of growth, and others maybe the asset, the salary of employees, and year. They are all treated as variables. And here is and here is a schematic diagram of the immediate effect. We can see that the different kinds of shareholders or the ownership may affect the IC and CSR directly or indirectly. We will talk about later in the modeling setting. Descriptive statistics and corporate correlation. Then we'll talk about the model regression analysis. According to the regression result, we can see that the variable in the dependent and independent variables in the analysis of regression result from column 4 and 5, the coefficient of the resistance is positive and significant, indicating that pressure-resistant institutional shareholdings can restrain the IC defects and improve IC effectiveness. Pressure-resistant institutions are important to participate in the corporate governance and play an active supervisory role in the management, which is conducive in improving corporate internal governance and reducing operation risk. However, the coefficient on the sensitive is not so significant. It's not statistically significant. There is a commercial interest relationship between pressure-sensitive institutions and invested enterprises other than its investment. That makes the lack of motivation to continuously promote IC effectiveness. So the hypothesis 2 here is verified. Okay, so next, from the controllable variables from column 4 and 5 on this paper, the coefficient of growth are positive and significant. When the development trend of enterprise is good, they have higher level of governance, which strengthens IC construction process. Besides, in column 5, the coefficient in the asset is negative and significant. So in general, the control chain of large-scale enterprises is longer, which is easy to cause a serious insider control and thus adversely affect IC effectiveness. The coefficient on the other control variables are not statistically insignificant. So next, in the Model 3's regression models, for the control variables, the coefficient on the such as growth, the asset, and the financial statement are statistically significant, and this conclusion are consistent with those from Model 1. They are coincidence. They are not just coincidence. They are simply in the same trend. Then a robust test will be taken in this paper. From these two kind of tables, you can see that the conclusion in the test, in the robust test, is based on the Heckman two-stage regression. So this two-stage of different kind of regression is that, well, we can see the sentence from the last paragraph, that is, the pressure resistance institutional shareholdings will improve CSR performance and IC effectiveness. Yeah. And the effective IC passed a significant immediate effect between the pressure resistance institutional ownership and the CSR performance. Then we will draw a conclusion that is, well, the main conclusion of this paper is that the pressure-resistant institutional shareholding significantly will improve the CSR performance and IC effectiveness. However, pressure-sensitive institutional ownership has no significant promoting effects on CSR performance and IC effectiveness. Effective IC has a significant immediate effect between pressure-resistant institutional ownership and CSR performance, but this effect is not reflected between the pressure-sensitive institutional ownership and the CSR performance. So, compared with pressure-sensitive institutions, pressure-resistant institutions supervise control IC construction to feedback the expectation and demand of stakeholders in addition to economic interest and improve CSR performance. This study, well, provides that new evidence, especially in China, for interpreting the role of heterogeneous institutional shareholding, and is helpful for the regulators to monitor the standardized of institutional shareholding behaviors. That is for, we can use it as a monitor, yeah. Well, So, while developing institutional investors beyond normal conditions, the regulations, and the regulators should focus on promoting institutional investors to play the role stabilizing the capital market in order to better or guide institutional investors to improve CSR performance. It is necessary to optimize the structure of institutional investors, expand the ranks of institutional investors engaged in long-term value investment, increase the shareholding ratio of security investment funds, QFIN, and social security funds, and enhance their ability to improve CSR performance and enhance IC effectiveness. Meanwhile, the regulatory authorities guide insurance companies, security brokers, financial companies, and other pressure-sensitive institutional investors to establish a long-term shareholding concept, to build an incentive mechanism for institutional investors to hold shares for a longer time. So a reasonable incentive mechanism should be designed to guide a listed company to improve quality structure, to improve CSR performance, and finally promote the healthy and the stable development of the national economy in and last. So based on the conclusion we mentioned above, the regulators should take measures to encourage the further enhance IC effectiveness and promote the positive factor of IC improving CSR performance and stabilizing the capital market. Meanwhile, the regulation encourage the institutional investor to take initiative to participate to corporate business decisions and enhance the transparency of internal business decision and information disclosure. So IC, which means the internal control construction, is a long systematic process. Institutional investors supervise enterprise to improve the IC, which means the internal control system construction, optimize the quality of IC information disclosure, promote the design of the IC to be more reasonable, more effective operation, and safeguard to legitimate rights and the interests of stakeholders. By enhancing IC effectiveness, enterprises can reduce the risk of expectation of stakeholders, promote the mediating factor of IC between institutional shareholding and CSR performance, and enhance the consciousness of improving CSR performance. So, thanks for watching.